Hey Professor, now we're looking at question 2 for the final exam, the JK flip-flop circuit. So here's my positive edge schematic. I was actually able to figure out the question that I sent you. I just added a stem there and set it to our clock configuration from the first problem. So now we can jump to the results. So starting off, our J and K are at 0 and our clock is also set to 0, and so therefore Q and Q bar are also 0. Moving forward, we see that clock jumps to 1, but that doesn't change anything. And then clock goes back to 0 at 1 microsecond. Still doesn't change anything because our requirements don't specify anything about that. We have our J jump to 1, and when J jumps to 1, we know that our next output, when J jumps to 1 and K is 0, we know that our next output is going to be 1. Or sorry, our next clock edge output is going to be 1. And so we see that right here. We see our clock edge become 1, and we see our outputs change to 1 and 0. Our K jumps, but that doesn't change anything. And then our clock goes back down to 0, and our outputs remain the same. And then right here, because J and K are 1, our output is going to equal Q bar. So our Q is going to equal Q bar, and so therefore our Q goes to 0 and our Q bar now becomes 1. Moving forward, our clock goes back down to 0, but once again, those don't really make any changes. Or no, it would. We complement our output. Sorry. So therefore, if our Q is 0, our clock's going to become 1. And then here our clock becomes 0 again, just part of the pattern. And then now we see here that both J and K become 0. And so when both J and K are 0, we know that our output's not going to be changed, and our output's going to be equal to Q, so we're still at 0. Then our clock jumps to 1, and our clock jumps to 0, and that makes no changes. And then here we see J jump to 1, meaning that we should see everything jump back up, or I guess switch again, and we do. So we see that our next output becomes, or our next clock edge output becomes 1 right there. And we see that our Q and Q bar go to 1 and 0 respectively. Our clock goes back down to 0 unchanged. Our clock comes up to 1, and then our K comes up to 1. And like we said before, when J and K are 1, our output should complement, and it does. We see it goes back down to 0, making our Q 1, or leaving our Q at 1. And then our J goes back down to 0 and stays at 0 the rest of the time. And our clock moves up and down, but since the J and K aren't changing in any kind of sequence, it remains the same throughout the rest of the schematic, or the results. Sorry, I've been working all day. I'm a little tired, but hopefully that was pretty clear.